Okay, so we are here today to welcome Ranan Alexandrowicz, the director of the film Viewing Booth. Welcome in Ji.hlava, in a way.
Hi, Radim. Hi.
And good morning, probably, because for you it's now quite early, no? Or?
Yeah, no, it's 11:30. It's already
okay.
after. So I'm awake. So if I don't answer well, it's not because it's morning.
Okay, perfect. For the people who will watch us or hopefully write some questions, they already seen the film. It should be sort of question answers. So we can at least pretend that everybody saw the film and to be very concrete, because my first question is really very concrete. And it's about a scene with the soldiers, Israeli soldiers coming to the flat of Palestinians in the night, asking for waking up children. You discuss a lot the context of the, I mean, context is crucial word for all the film, but specifically in this scene as well. But it's not mentioned there. So what is real context of it? Is it a regular visit, or is it because of some suspicious thing they expect there some problem, or what is the wider context of this scene?
Yeah, that's a really important question. Also because for the people who saw the film in the audience, it was a big dilemma for me not to put the context in the film because you know, Maya is constantly evoking this idea of context, and can we look at something and can we judge something if we don't have the context? And so of course there was a temptation for me as the filmmaker to clarify the context, but again, but in that way there would be something very unfair towards Maya, who is the protagonist of the film, because she's watching it without context. So I would put the audience in a kind of a superior position to her if I clarified with the use of voiceover or whatever. The context of this image, which is you know, a 8-minute long one-shot documentation of a home invasion in the middle of the night of a Palestinian family. The context is actually the occupation, the until now 53-year-long post 67 occupation, which is a military occupation which wants to exercise its control, its total control through many means. One of the ways is to, and this has been going on for decades and decades from the beginning, is to, you know, to give the occupied people a feeling that the military is always there. It can always be there. It can always come in. It doesn't need a warrant. It doesn't need a reason. It can always come in and search your house. And so this is the majority of these things that happen every day and every night, and also tonight probably, is really part of the big system of occupying. Naturally, there is resistance to the occupation, so sometimes this kind of situation would happen because there is information that in this house there is resistance, there might be weapons. This can also happen. But as people see the way the soldiers are behaving in this scene, obviously if they would have been expecting someone to be under the bed, you know, with a Kalashnikov or some bomb, booby trap, they would be behaving very differently. Of course, I didn't say anything of this to Maya because it was not this was not what I was doing there, arguing with her about the nature of things. I was trying to understand how people see it in the most authentic way. There is, just to fully answer your question, there is one moment which Maya says they're not translating here. B'Tselem, the human rights organization, did not provide translation, and she sees it as a kind of a reason doubt and the image. And actually, if you listen to the text, that I also did not translate it because it was not translated in the original. But the text gives in something about this specific invasion, because the soldiers are discussing how many doors there are to the house and how many staircases. So it becomes clear to you, if you understand a little bit about this, that they are also involved in the mapping of, in kind of mapping and taking pictures and creating this, actually this database of everything that's happening everywhere, like all possible homes or all possible faces. And that again is kind of like another layer of the control, like monitoring and having as much intelligence about the occupied area. So that's around the context. But I just or maybe I will return to this later. Maybe you have questions from the audience.
Not yet, but we can tell to the audience who is watching us at the moment, so they can put the questions in the chat, and
okay.
Also there is a chance to ask loudly, but maybe in the chat. I'm still checking it, so if there is anything.
So in that case, I want to address this question of context in a more general way, because you asked what is the context of this home invasion, and I wanted to give the actual response. But I also want to speak more broadly about context. And when you look what's happening with Maya and the images, but also with me and Maya and the images in the film, so there is like a battle or a war about what are the boundaries of the frame, in a way, if it makes sense, because I would have wanted Maya to do something like a zoom out of what she's seeing, and to see this one image of the home invasion in the context that I just told you, in the context of 53 years of occupation, in which every night some other family experiences this, and you see this because it's so normal for them. It's obviously not the first time that they deal with this situation, right? It's clear through the behavior of everyone. So I would have wanted Maya to look at and say, wow, like to look at the big picture and to use the big zoomed out picture for context for her to look at this image. But in a way, Maya wanted to do something different. She also wanted to change the boundaries of the frame. But if we continue with this cinematic metaphor, she wanted to do something else. She wanted to pull the camera back, like on a dolly. She didn't want to zoom out and see the 53 years, but she wanted to pull the camera back and to see the father that is filming the children, because the image of children being woken up in front of a gun is different from the image of a person filming his children being woke up in front of a gun, right? It's a different image to negotiate. It's easier to negotiate. So in a way, there is a kind of a battle of what is the right context to use in order to interpret images. And I think this is really telling of the moment that we are in, that context becomes so important that it sometimes also becomes a mechanism already to erase what we actually see plainly in front of our eyes.
No, it's not stable, the connection.
So you don't hear me very well?
We have to wait a little bit. Just for a moment. So if you can just repeat the last maybe 30 seconds, I would say. Sorry, there is some connection problem on the way.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah,
yes,
I'm not sure what to repeat, but I'm not sure what to repeat. But I was talking about the fact that context, which we know that is very important to interpret images, is also becoming a kind of a trap or a way not to see.
Yeah, sure. On the other hand, of course, Maya is different character. She's more familiar with the situation in Israel, although she's living in United States, but still for people from other countries, or for Europe at least, for me, you know, there is always this question. They have to have reason, because forces like army or police has to have some reason. It's maybe so unusual for us that that we ask for this context, which is like wider. What is behind the?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, first of all, as far as I know, European history, with many regimes, this kind of tactics and strategies were used, you know, to control, and not always to have a reason. Sometimes the control is the reason. Yeah, so I think European people can understand it. But I also want to say that, you know, many of us, I mean, it's a good example to think about the last half a year or so with the COVID. Do I know that most of what I know about the United States, of where I'm in, I know through images, through, you know, we are all in our viewing booth looking outside. So really, sometimes even what you know about your local world is through video representation. The world is becoming more and more visible to us in one way, but on the other hand, it all is through this one window, this one frame. So I don't know.
Yeah, no, it was just to add to this. Of course, historically we have this experience, let's say our relatives from the past, our grandparents, parents, so we somehow understand, especially in Central Eastern Europe, of course. But I think in the present life, we just see it in this way, that there must be some very concrete reason. I understand that it's something else over there,
true,
but just now think about this. Yeah.
True, and also for most Israelis, because most Israelis, Jewish Israelis, and even Palestinians with Israeli ID, most of them, they live in a kind of a constitutional situation, which the police cannot come into their house without having a warrant, without, you know, a judge allowing it. So when they look at this, at the pictures from the West Bank, they will also apply the logic of our own life on it and say, well, they have to have a reason. But there are testimonies of soldiers and people who have been there who say, actually, no, it's pretty, a lot of it, sometimes there are reasons, of course, but a lot of it is very arbitrary. It's just part of the mechanism.
Mm-hmm. Can you maybe say something a little bit more about the origin of the clips, and especially those ones from the human rights organization? Because since I know you are also somehow involved in you were somehow working with helping Palestinians to shoot them years ago.
I mean, let's say that I know well, regarding B'Tselem, I think that's more important than myself. But B'Tselem, the human rights organization, which I use the videos from, was established in 1989, so more than 30 years ago, with the goal of documenting human rights abuse that are part of the occupation. And the occupation at that time was only 22 years long. And at that time also there were no digital cameras and no video cameras. So the work was done mostly by taking testimonies. As the digital image revolution happened in the 90s and the 2000s, and cameras became accessible, and then later also the streaming technology, B'Tselem established this program called Shooting Back, which was of course, shooting with a camera, which was to give cameras to people in the West Bank so they can document what goes on in their area. And they have very high standards of making sure that the images are not manipulated. If you look at that video, even in its entirety, it's not edited. And they also do research around every video to sort of make sure that they have the facts around it and some more testimonies to what happened, as much information as they can get. And they also subject these videos, they send them to the Israeli army and say, would you like to comment? Would you like to give your version of the story, which usually the army will not. But anyway, so this organization is doing hugely important work in my eyes in really documenting what's going on, creating a historical documentation, and it's getting a lot of more and more difficulties in Israel. So Israel is functioning within Israel. If you don't take into consideration the military occupation, Israel is functioning like a Western democracy, right? So you have these basic rights of freedom of speech, kind of like in every other country. But as the years go by, there is more and more pressure trying to make laws that will limit such organizations, and especially B'Tselem, and also politicians create a public atmosphere that's really naming this organization as traitors and people who are giving away giving information about Israeli soldiers and so it's becoming more and more dangerous for them to work for this organization. And I really feel that it's very important for them to exist and for Israeli society to allow their existence and to guard them.
And can you compare historically, let's say, or between the generation? Maya is different generation than you. Are these, let's say, skills to understand or not to watch such a clips without prejudice? Is it weaker now, or is it more complicated? Are there more stereotypes now in Israeli society and than in the past, let's say?
Yeah, again, I don't think that. So Maya is not Israeli. Her parents came from Israel to America when they were younger. She was born in the U.S. But she has connection and she has she supports Israel very much. She has family there. So, but she's not Israeli. But I think that in that way, the film is not really. I mean, I think that the film is about a more universal phenomenon than about Israelis or Jews or Americans watching videos of the Israeli occupation. It's really about the way we interact with such images today. And we definitely are from two different generations, Maya and I, and it's really impressive to see how much media literacy Maya has for someone who is not never studied media. She is a critical, curious viewer, open enough to not just turn things off and turn away from them. She's dealing with things. She's trying to negotiate things. She uses all the knowledge that she has from living in the media world, in the media environment that is now. So definitely she comes from a very different place that I grew up in, which was media was, especially these kinds of images were very scarce. And when they would appear, they wouldn't be just there for a few hours to be replaced by the next one. They left a big impression. And so definitely one of the things that I'm trying to understand now is really the media environment that we are today. I don't think it's not necessarily a generational thing, because I am also living in this kind of environment today, and you are also living in this kind of environment. It's really the question of how do we interact with it. And so I think there is a difference between Maya and myself, but there's also, I think it's more important to look at the environments that we are in.
One of the reasons, of course, it's also your personal experience. You are mentioning in the film that you've been soldier. That's we can say that it's duty in Israel to become soldier. So what type of experience was it for you, connecting this issues, this important questions for you?
Yeah. So actually, my experience is really, my own experience is really like complex, because yes, I was part of the occupying forces in the late 80s, early 90s, and I have that experience. And I also, as you mentioned before, I was also part of the grassroots activism against the occupation in the for a number of years. So I know specifically these places that are in the videos that I used in the film. I know them also as an activist. So and of course it's different, but in the film, so of course I could have said in the film, you know, okay, I know this because I know that this is what's happening now, because I've seen it, because, and I believe because of the type of dialogue that Maya has with people, that she would probably have, you know, accepted it. And but this was really not my role to impose my experience on the film. It did worry me. It was a kind of a challenge with making this film, because I was worried after I shot it. I was worried if I will betray Maya, or I will betray myself, or I will betray these images. And before the film it was interesting, because before the film was finished, Maya had already seen a few rough cuts, but I went also to show it to the Palestinians who had shot the videos that are in it. And I was very worried that they would feel that maybe I just created this platform to deconstruct their work. But fortunately, it was really, they were very engaged with the film, and they saw it very differently than perhaps the way me and you see it, or other people, because they said everything that Maya brings up, all her arguments, we know very well. We face these arguments every day. There's nothing new about that for us. What's new for us is to see how she's looking, and to see how she is, to feel that she is having to negotiate with the images, and it makes us feel that she will change her mind at a certain point. And so that was interesting to see.
Yeah, that's the power of films. That's why we make them when they are the social media clips and news TV news, that it still makes sense to make film, at least like only because of the expression of the face, which is somehow interesting for the audience. I will just say that people can ask us in this. It's questions and answers. I was wrong before. It's speaking about chat, so it's questions and answers, and you can put there your questions if you listen us. We speak about a film called Viewing Booth with Radim Alexandrowicz, American director or Israeli director. What is correct?
Well, my identity is Israeli, but so that's the only you know, ID that I have. I'm living in the US.
Okay, so maybe more general question, and too complicated to tell it in short time, but still, how do you see the future? Is there any solution? Is there any next step which should be done? There is this American activity nowadays which which seems crazy from my perspective, but somehow trying to move things ahead.
Yeah, I don't, you know, that's one question that I don't have an answer for, and I don't, and I also feel that, you know, with previous films that I made that really were films about the issue, I felt that I had the kind of right to use the film as a platform to give my thoughts about, you know, how to achieve equality and justice for Palestinians. I don't even want to use the word peace anymore because it's so, it lost its meaning. But with this film, I really feel that it's not a film about Palestine or a film about Palestine and Israel. It lives in that realm, because those are the images that we look at, because those are the images that are most important for me and that have influenced my life and influenced my work. But it's really not the film to, it's not a film that's kind of a, that calls to, for me to make a political analysis or my political opinions. It's really more about, I ask myself how we can preserve the integrity of the nonfiction image in a way. That's maybe what's the question that's coming out of this film. We have sort of come from a, I grew up in a world where, as I said before, images, nonfiction images were relatively scarce and were very meaningful. And it was a world where the idiom, you know, photography is truth, was kind of accepted by people. Like, if we see it, we believe it. And in the last, let's say, 2 decades, we somehow have been transformed to a place where it seems that nonfiction images are met with, first of all, with kind of an inherent disbelief. First of all, we look at the nonfiction image and we ask ourselves, is it trying to trick us somehow? What's the context? We ask ourselves all these questions of why we shouldn't believe the image. So I think, so in a way, this is where I am. I'm trying to figure out, for the community of people who believe in nonfiction, who believe in nonfiction image as an important resource to humanity, people who make images and people who, you know, watch images seriously. How can we move beyond this point that we are in now to a place where we accept all the challenges, but we also don't erase the power of the nonfiction image, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure. That sounds like a understandable conclusion. But maybe to add, what will be the what can be the authority, or how can we? I mean, we can do it through the films, as you did. You did something. You did a case study, let's say, of thinking of limits of this belief and non-belief, fiction and non-fiction, and all these raising these questions. But is it then it won't be photography in general what we trust in, but maybe the medium where we receive it will be the context, which, because you know what I mean, I believe in certain media that they don't manipulate it, they have some editorial system which will avoid it. So what can be the authority, or you know, not authority like there's something strict, but who we can believe, or
I understand. I understand your question. It's really good, because if me and you believe in a certain media that they don't manipulate, but someone else doesn't believe in them, then we are stuck in the same place, that he has the media that he believes and we have the media that we believe. So we are really losing the possibility to have some common grounds to agree on. So where I am is in a place where I'm looking for this dialogue, to see if there is a more dialogical model between makers of images and viewers of images. And The Viewing Booth is a film about a breakdown of communication that really became a dialogue of some form. I'm asking myself I mean, Maya and I don't agree about Israel and about the occupation and about Palestine. We don't agree. But I think out of the film, we came out with some mutual understanding about the difficulty of seeing. So maybe that is a common ground. If people from all sides of the political struggle can acknowledge that we have come to this problem of seeing, and do we want to move forward from that, from a place? What can, and then we ask the question that you are asking, what kind of mechanism can help create rules that are accepted by everyone for images? It's almost like, I'm not saying that this was a success, but the whole idea of international humanitarian law, which said, you know, there's no way to prevent war, but let's try to create some rules. Maybe there should be more of a discussion, like an environmental discussion, or maybe the environmental issues is a better example. In the same way that environment is discussed, I think media environment should also be discussed, and try to create some understanding of how to make it viable again.
I must say that what is interesting, the logline of hlava Film Festival is in Czech, it's Myslet filmem, to think through the film, or with the film, to think through the film, I would say. So your film or your way, your approach is perfectly fitting to the program. So it's good to have you here. And maybe if you can mention now, what is your next plan? What is your next film? What is your project that you are working now on?
Yeah, it's hard for me to. I will say this: when you go to this level when you go to this meta level, and you start observing the, you know, film in the way that I have through the viewing booth, and that I'm still working on other things related to that and writing things. It's a little bit like when you begin to look at your feet walking, and then you suddenly don't understand how you manage to walk. So I'm a little bit in this kind of situation, but I can say that what I feel that is important for me now is really to continue to explore the relationship between people and images, and to find other ways to do it, and to, like you say, to think through film about, you know, the power of film, or the power of audiovisual image in our lives is huge. It's no longer it's not a cultural thing. It's really a big part of our reality. So this is somehow what I feel that I should try to contribute to think about this reality through film.
And isn't it time to get back to fiction, because your original background is fiction, as I know, and then you started to do mainly documentaries. So maybe.
I don't think so. I feel that that I probably won't go back to the fiction side.
Okay, so thank you very much for being here with me, and enjoy lockdown time or pandemic time as much as possible, and try another films from the program. I think you will find there a lot of interesting topics and filmmaking approaches. There are some 290 films which will be now online available for next 7 days. So maybe you can find some inspiration also for looking for new approach and new style of filming. So thank you again, and see you next time in person.
Thanks so much. Bye bye. Have a good day.
Bye.